Coming up in a newscast tonight. Following high-level and military inter-Korean talks, promising discussions between Seoul and Pyongyang continue at the border. The latest one centers around sports cooperation, including Asian Games and a basketball friendly. Seoul's top diplomat answers questions from the press regarding the latest developments in the nation's foreign policy frontline, confirming that the South Korean, along with the U.S., will continue to build on the framework to develop ties with North Korea. The nation's fans are pumped up and ready to cheer on the Taeguk Warriors. Sweden, their first opponent, has a significantly higher FIFA ranking, but as Mexico demonstrated with their shocking win, anything is possible. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. Once again, our starting point is the latest inter-Korean discussions that were held this morning at the border. This comes right after the two sides held their first general-level military talks of this decade. Let's go straight to our Park Hee-jun, who's been following the process since the preparation stages. Hee-jun, what can you tell us at this point?
Right, Daniel. Today's discussions were centered on sports exchanges between the two Koreas. The talks began at around 10 a.m. at the Peace House, the South Korean building located in the Truce village of Panmunjom, and have lasted pretty much all day. Now, the outcomes of the talks came in just moments ago. The two Koreas agreed to host an inter-Korean basketball game on June 4th in Pyongyang and another one in Seoul in the fall. This comes after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un proposed holding inter-Korean basketball games in a summit with South Korean President Moon Jaein. And during the talks, the two sides also agreed to march together under the Korean unification flag for the opening and closing ceremonies of the upcoming 2018 Asian Games in Indonesia, as they did for the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. They will also form joint teams for the Asian Para Games. South and North Korea will have follow-up negotiations for these events through the exchange of documents and will do their best to carry out the agreements. The talks are part of ongoing efforts by the two Koreas to implement the Panmunjom Declaration from the April 27th Inter-Korean Summit. And because the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics is seen as the impetus that led to the recent peace talks on the Korean Peninsula, the two Koreas will be focused on carrying on the momentum of sports cooperation to strengthen their ties. And the results of today's talks will likely be an important stepping stone for their relations as well. That's all I have for you now. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Hee-jun, thank you for those updates. The nation's top diplomat held a press briefing today, which also happens to be the one-year anniversary of her inauguration. Most of the questions center around North Korea, including the recent historic summit. Lee Ji-won has the highlights from that session.
On the one-year anniversary of her taking office, South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa spoke to ministry correspondents on Monday. Following the series of diplomatic events last week, the heated topic was obviously the results of the North Korea-US summit. Minister Kang said the framework for further developing ties with Pyongyang has been established and that the foreign ministry will use the momentum to achieve denuclearization and permanent peace on the peninsula, including the declaration of the end of the Korean War.
Our government hopes to achieve this by the end of this year. We are looking closely with the U.S. on this. That is written on the Panmunjom Declaration signed between the two Koreas in April. And with the North and the U.S. reaffirming that declaration in their joint statement, we see a willingness from those two to realize this as well.
Mentioning her talks with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo earlier in the morning, Minister Kang said the two countries' airtight cooperation will continue.
Once the U.S. forms a North Korean negotiating team, we plan to hold these high-level talks along with diplomatic working-level talks to delve deeper into North Korea's denuclearization and achieving peace on the Korean Peninsula more technically and concretely.
Minister Kang said she and Secretary Pompeo exchanged details about Pompeo's visit to China and the first meeting between generals from the two Koreas in over a decade. She also said that Pompeo was determined to carry out the follow-up measures in America's agreement with the North speedily, but that the specific steps for what seemed to be an imminent phone call between the North and the U.S. have not been taken yet. Trump hinted last week that he'd call North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Sunday, U.S. local time, after the two exchanged numbers during their summit. When asked about President Trump's comments about Seoul and Tokyo paying for North Korea's denuclearization, Kang said it's thought that all stakeholders will and should contribute in various ways, including sharing their experience and capabilities. Other diplomatic concerns were also mentioned, including the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during the Second World War and the widely disputed 2015 deal on the matter. Without a formal apology by the Japanese government for its wartime atrocity, the deal has been long stalled, and Minister Kang said efforts are being made to return the 1 billion yen, or roughly $8 million from a fund created by the Japanese government for the victims. She added that by the end of this month, her ministry will announce its plans to raise the comfort woman issue as a grave human rights concern for the world. Minister Kang also laid out some of her plans for innovation at the ministry to boost efficiency and better support the new era of peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. Through means like increasing the number of working-level officials, the minister said she hopes to create a competent foreign affairs ministry trusted by the people. 이지원, Arirang News.
President Moon Jaein and his Russian counterpart will have a lot to discuss when they meet. The liberal leader's state visit to that country was planned earlier this year, and since then, a lot has transpired. Our chief Jeju correspondent Moon Jaein explains further.
With relatively equal relationship with South and North Korea, Russia's role in the context of resolving the North Korean nuclear challenge may not be front and center, but it's definitely central, and the South Korean government well recognizes that. As President Moon Jaein gears up for his 4-day, 2-night state visit to the world's largest country by area at the invitation of President Vladimir Putin this week, Seoul's top office highlighted its key role at this time of rapid change in geopolitical landscape surrounding the Korean Peninsula.
As the Korean Peninsula moves towards denuclearization and peace is developed, we anticipate the president's visit to Russia to serve as an opportunity to strengthen strategic communication and collaboration between South Korea and Russia and boost practical cooperation and peaceful prosperity in Northeast Asia.
During his 3 days spent on Russian soil, the South Korean leader will deliver a speech before the Duma, becoming the first South Korean president to address the lower house of Russia's Federal Assembly, meet with Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, sit down for a one-on-one with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin for the third time since taking office, and attend a state dinner. Now, President Moon will also meet with South Koreans living in Russia as well as with businessmen from both countries before flying down to the southern city of Rostov-on-Don. There, Mr. Moon will bring out the Red Devil in him, cheering for the South Korean squad as they take on Mexico in their match 2 of the FIFA World Cup before wrapping up the first state visit by a sitting South Korean president to Russia since 1999. As much as the visit will be focused on the current thawing relations with Pyongyang and the summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump, especially as the South Korean president's Moscow visit comes on the heels of a senior North Korean official, Kim Yong-nam's meeting with Mr. Putin days earlier, Presidents Moon and Putin are also expected to discuss how to enhance substantive bilateral economic cooperation, including the development of future growth engines.
The recent North Korea-U.S. summit and the InterKorean summit have created conditions for Russia and South Korea to get started on the preparation work for Seoul, Pyongyang, Moscow three-way cooperation projects. That includes railways, gas pipelines, electricity grids, and the Najin-Kasang logistics partnership.
Not only that, the two countries have in the works a bilateral innovation platform project where Russia's outstanding basic technology will be coupled with South Korea's applied technology and information and communication technology to create extraordinary innovation, and South Korea's medical care tapping into Russia, as well as remote medical care and telemedicine. President Moon's Moscow trip will be the second of its kind to that country following its participation in the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok last September, but the first to the Russian capital. Moon Jaein, Arirang News, the Blue House.
Dokdo, Korean territory historically, geographically, and under international law. Yet Japan continues its misguided false claims to the islets, which is why a 2-day maritime exercise is held to improve defensive readiness against threats like infiltration. Park Ji-won introduces to us the Dokdo drills.
South Korea's Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Coast Guard began their regular two-day maritime drills on Monday on the nation's easternmost island of Dokdo and the surrounding East Sea. South Korea's Navy says the maritime exercises are held in conjunction with field training exercises by the Navy's First Fleet. 6 warships, including a 3,200-ton destroyer, as well as 7 aircraft, including Navy P-3 maritime patrol aircraft, Lynx helicopters, and Air Force F-15K fighter jets are participating in the drills. According to South Korea's Defense Ministry Monday morning, the Dokdo Defense Exercise is a regular Navy exercise aiming at preventing external forces' infiltration into the South Korean territory of Dokdo. The Dokdo exercises date back to 1986 and have been held twice a year since 2003. The drills last took place in December last year. South Korea's Navy official told Arirang News Monday that these drills are similar in size and level to previous years. Meanwhile, Japan's media outlets reported that Tokyo's foreign ministry protested to Seoul through a diplomatic channel, saying the maritime exercise is unacceptable considering the Japanese government's stance over Dokdo. Japan has been intensifying its wrongful territorial claims over South Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo, which has belonged to South Korea historically for thousands of years and is under the legal and effective control of the South Korean government. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Tonight, Team South Korea take to the field for their first match in Russia. Large crowds gather in all corners of the country to watch the games outdoors and cheer their hearts out. Many office workers were allowed to punch out early to get a head start in getting revved up for that World Cup match. Once again, we go to our Kan Young-woo at Gyeongdong-daero, where it's set to be 2002 all over again. Young-woo, what's the atmosphere like there right now?
Yes, Daniel, so we're less than an hour away from the start of South Korea's first match against Sweden. Thousands of football fans have come out to the streets to cheer the Taeguk Warriors. Here in Gyeongdong-daero Street, one of the main cheering sections in Seoul has been blocked off since last night for this special event. Unlike the 2014 Brazil World Cup, when the games were played in the early morning Korea time, this year's games are taking place at night. As we're nearing the kickoff, more and more fans dressed in red are gathering here to show their support for the men's national football team. And Korean singers have been putting on a show for the fans just before the game as the excitement keeps building up. Well, the stage is set for now. We'll see what happens within the next 3 hours. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Hyung-woo, thank you for being out there for us. We appreciate it. 1990, almost immediately after the fall of the Soviet Union, is looked to as the starting point of modern diplomatic ties between Seoul and Moscow. Today, cultural interaction between the two sides continue to improve, partly thanks to the country playing host to the World Cup. Won Jung-hwan files us this report all the way from Russia.
In the city where South Korea will play their first match at the 2018 World Cup, South Koreans have gathered to support the squad ahead of their first game and to promote the country's image through a unique cultural event. Looking to enhance the relationship between the two countries, the Korean Cultural Center in Russia hosted a Korean film festival on Sunday for Russians living in Nizhny Novogord. Some 100 local residents experienced some Korean culture watching the Korean football-themed movie On the Pitch, the perfect choice, considering the World Cup action taking place in Russia.
Our center has been organizing the Year of Korean Film for 3 consecutive years. We've been showing different movie genres to Russians for free, not only in Moscow but in other cities as well.
This time, they have chosen Nizhny Novogord and Rostov-on-Don as South Korea will play their first 2 World Cup games in the cities. The Russians that came along had a lot of fun.
I watched the recent Winter Olympics held in South Korea, and since then, I've been interested in Korean culture.
I love Korean music and culture. In fact, I've been studying Korean for more than 2 years now.
Since September 2006, The Korean Cultural Center in Russia has been playing an important role in spreading Korean culture in the country. For well over a decade, the center has been organizing programs related to the arts, music, literature, film, and cuisine. With several more cultural events scheduled to be held throughout the 2018 Russia World Cup, the two countries will get to know each other a bit better. 원정환, 아리랑 뉴스, Nizhny Novogord.
Back here in the nation, President Moon Jaein encouraged employees at the nation's top office to keep up the good work. The pat on the back follows the Democratic Party's major victory in last week's local elections. Hwang Ho-jun has more from the meeting that was streamed live for all Cheongwade staff.
The president's regular Monday meeting with his top aides wasn't so regular after all. For the first time since he took office, President Moon Jae-in ordered the meeting to be streamed live to all employees of the top office. He said he wanted increased efforts to be more transparent. However, the meeting still kept certain matters behind closed doors due to security reasons. During the meeting, President Moon congratulated his Blue House staff after the ruling party won an overwhelming victory in the local elections last week. He said the election results prove the era of political division through regionalism and political color has come to an end. The ruling Democratic Party won 14 posts out of 17 major mayoralties and provincial governorships, along with 11 out of 12 seats up for grabs at the National Assembly. The president gave all credit to his staff, balking at the claim that the local election victory was solely because of the high approval ratings of President Moon.
대통령이 혼자서 잘할 수가 없는 것입니다. 대통령이 뭔가 좀 잘했다면, 그리고 좀 잘한 것으로 평가받았다면, 그것은 함께한 우리 청와대 비서실이 아주 잘했다는 뜻이고, 또 함께한 우리 문재인 정부의 내각이 잘했다는 뜻입니다.
However, he stressed that the victory should not get to people's heads, warning his officials to steer clear from arrogance.
지지가 높았다는 것은 그만큼 기대가 크다는 뜻입니다. 그 지지에 대해서 답하지 못하면, 그리고 높은 기대를 충족하지 못하면 기대는 금세 실망으로 바뀔 수 있습니다.
Already into his second year in office, President Moon stressed the importance of learning from the follies of past administrations and urged his staff to come together to successfully manage state affairs. According to the Blue House spokesperson, such efforts would include Senior Secretary to the President for Civil Affairs driving an inspection on the newly launched local governments by the end of this year. President Moon said all Cheongwade staff, regardless of their rank, represent the president himself, and he insisted they be competent, that they cultivate ethical standards, and that they be humble in their service to the people. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
The ruling party is gearing up for its national convention where a new chair will be chosen. It's a different story for opposition parties reeling from the devastating defeat with some serious revamping to do. Kim Min-ji has the latest from the domestic political arena.
The ruling Democratic Party of Korea Monday said it will be holding a national convention in August to select its new leadership. The new chair will replace Choo Mi-ae, whose term ends August 27th. It's expected to be a heated competition, as whoever is elected will hold the key nominations for the general elections in 2 years' time, and as a new leader will take the helm following the party's sweeping win in last week's local and by-elections. The party claimed 14 out of 17 mayor or governor posts, as well as 11 out of 12 parliamentary seats. But for the meantime, the ruling party has warned of complacency and called on those elected to take greater responsibility.
In order to pay back our supporters and live up to their expectations, those elected must put down the joy of victory and turn over a new leaf. I asked them to carry out their duties so they can back President Moon Jae-in's policy goals for local governments.
At the other end of the spectrum, opposition parties are reeling from a heavy defeat. The acting chair of the main opposition Liberty Korea party laid out a set of reform measures after winning just one mayor and one governor position in the local elections. But pushing through with the measures isn't expected to be easy, as not all party members are on the same page, saying that the decision is one-sided and didn't come after much discussion. The proposed reforms include disbanding the central governing party, changing the party's name, and inviting external figures into its emergency committee.
We will disband the central governing party and start relevant operations right away. I will be at the forefront of this task. We will bring in new figures to our party so that we can take on new challenges.
The minor opposition Padamita Party is operating under an emergency committee, having won none of the 17 top positions. It will be selecting a new floor leader next week and carrying out various debates as to how to position itself as a strong alternative to the two biggest parties, amid lingering concerns of an identity crisis following its merger in February this year.
We solemnly accept the choices of the people and will thoroughly reflect on our faults and reform the party accordingly. We will become one through communication and reconciliation.
With the opposition parties making changes after their defeat in the local elections, it's likely going to take some time before the National Assembly gets back to its regular business. For one, rival parties still have to elect a new parliamentary speaker for the second half of the 20th National Assembly, as well as elect new chairs for the standing committees. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Elsewhere around the world, over in Japan, a magnitude 6.1 tremor shook up Osaka this morning. It's reported 3 lives were lost due to the quake. Cha Sang-mi gets us up to speed with the developments.
It wasn't an ordinary 8 a.m. rush hour for commuters in Japan's second largest city on Monday. A powerful earthquake shook northern Osaka, leaving at least 2 men and a 9-year-old girl dead and at least 234 others injured. Japan's meteorological agency reported that the quake, with an initial magnitude of 5.9, later revised up to 6.1, struck inland at a depth of 10 kilometers. Power outages have been reported as well as light damage to a few train stations, causing some services to be halted. Roads suffered severe damage and water pipes burst, sending water flowing onto streets of Takatsuki City, where the biggest shock was felt. No tsunami warning was issued and no irregularities were spotted at the nuclear plants in the area, according to Kansai Electric Power, but more than 170,000 households had no power temporarily. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe told reporters that authorities were assessing the damage and that the safety of residents comes first.
The government is working as one to save lives after the earthquake that hit the region around Osaka City.
Seoul's Unification Ministry announced there were no South Korean casualties in Osaka and that they had sent out security concern text messages to those living in or visiting Japan and will continue to assess the situation. Japan's weather agency warned people in western Japan to be prepared for another big earthquake in the next few days. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, Team Korea's first game of the 2018 World Cup is just minutes away now. I'm hoping they get to silence the skeptics. Is the weather going to be favorable?
Well, Daniel, Korea is playing Sweden tonight at the Nizhny Novogord Stadium. It will be favorable, comfortable for spectators with temperatures near 24 degrees Celsius, and it's going to stay partly cloudy during the game. And for those of you fans in Korea watching the game outside, it will be chilly, falling into the low 20s. Tomorrow's weather in the nation is expected to get cloudy into the day, but it's going to stay sweltering hot. Meanwhile, Jeju is expected to get this year's first monsoon rain. Starting Tuesday morning until Wednesday morning, it will get to 20 to 60 millimeters, and the southern regions will also be affected. Tomorrow morning, Seoul starts at 19 degrees Celsius, Daegu 20, Gyeongju at 18 degrees. Into the afternoon, it goes way up to 28 for Seoul, Gwangju and Busan are lower at 26 and 24 degrees. The nation will remain under sunny skies, but the monsoon front will come back on Friday for Jeju Island. Next week, the full-on monsoon begins. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you on this latest edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for watching. Good day or good night, depending on your time zone.